Hi, this video is gonna be different from my usual ones. It's gonna be kinda serious. I'm gonna spill the tea about how I feel about Volodymyr Zelensky. I'll answer some tough questions about the war in Ukraine and share two sad family stories. So question number one, is Zelensky a dictator? Short answer, no. Let's read the definition of dictator on Wikipedia. A dictator is a political leader who possesses absolute power. And now take a look of these pictures of actual dictators. Who do you think fits right in? So, does Zelensky have all the power in Ukraine? Nope. Ukraine's biggest legislative body is Verkhovna Rada. It's up and running. And Zelensky was legally elected and is legitimate president until martial law is over. Oh, and by the way, Ukrainian legislation doesn't allow elections during martial law. I'm sure you, my dearest viewers, know the answers to these questions very, very well. But I feel like I have to say this. So question number two, what's Zelensky approval rating? In February, 63% of Ukrainians, aka the majority, fully, mostly or partially approved of his work as president. Do I think Zelensky is a perfect president? No. Does a perfect president even exist? Also no. Does he make mistakes? Yes, of course. But do I believe that there is a person who doesn't make mistakes? No, only in our imagination. But I think Zelensky does a great job representing Ukraine abroad. I feel like he acts in Ukraine's best interests. I see him working. You can literally watch 1,000 of his speeches to Ukrainians since the full-scale invasion began. And he is not just a president, he is the commander-in-chief, but it's not up to me to judge how well he does that job. What I can say, I'm grateful to our armed forces, because we've been fighting on the battlefield for 3 years against a country 28 times bigger than Ukraine. And we still have our own state. As for Zelensky's role in all this, we'll probably only find out after the war is over. Maybe we'll read about this in his memoirs or something. But as I said, now his work suits most Ukrainians. And let's move on to the question number 3. Who started the war? Russia. Period. In 2014, with the temporary occupation of Crimea, then the armed invasion of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and then in 2022 by invading the territory of Ukraine on a full scale. I can't believe this will be written in Ukrainians' history books someday. And yet here I am, along with millions of Ukrainians spending our youth living through this. Next question. The most difficult for me emotionally. What is Holodomor? Quick trigger warning. Here is the time code for the next part. So, Holodomor was a genocide of Ukrainians by Soviet Union. The word literally means death by starvation. The biggest one happened in 1932-1933. So the Soviet Union took all the crops from Ukrainian farmers, all the food from their homes. Why? To stop the massive uprising against Soviet rule. They even made it a crime to pick up leftover grain from the fields. Millions of Ukrainians died. Let me tell you a story from my own family. So in 1932, my great-grandma was 17. I'll probably just call her grandma to keep it simple. So she, with her parents, her sister, brother and his family, lived in a small village in central Ukraine. In 1932, in her village, the Soviets took everything, down to the last bit. And then, after the terrifying winter when the youngest child in the family died of starvation, her mother knew there was no food left. No way to survive. So she did the unthinkable. She took my grandma to a big city, Dnipropetrovsk, and left her there, so she could have a chance to live. Then Jewish doctors found my grandma at the market and took her home as a housemaid. I don't know who they were. My great-grandma is long gone and this is just a story she passed down. But she remembered them for the rest of her life. They fed her and gave a roof over her head. And she worked hard and secretly dried bread and stuffed it into a bag. And then, once she had enough, she ran away. So she walked around 100 kilometers. It's probably 62 miles back home. When she arrived, she found her mother and sister dying of hunger. They were too weak to eat solid food. So my grandma softened the bread with water and fed them slowly. She saved them. Here's the story. It seemed to have a happy ending, but not when you consider the context. Oh god, sad video. Okay, let's move on to the last question. Why don't Ukrainians want to be part of Russia? I think their last story pretty much explains it. My family's story is just one of millions. Some families had loved ones sent to concentration camps, others had relatives killed as enemies of people just for speaking in favor of Ukraine. So we have more than 10 million reasons not to want anything to do with Russia. Let me tell you one more story at the end. Before the Soviet Union, my great-great-grandfather was a landowner. He had a mill, a stationary steam engine, hired workers, a nice house. And then in 1920s, the Soviets came with a plan called decolonization. So they took away lands, businesses and any property from wealthy Ukrainians, just physically and ideologically destroying them. My great-great-grandfather lost everything. And a few years later, his entire family almost starved to death during Holodomor. You know, once I saw a trend where girls were dressing up in an old money aesthetic. And I thought, what would that look like in Ukraine? And then I realized it wouldn't. Most Ukrainian families have no old money. The Russians stole it. And that realization hits hard, on a level far beyond fashion. And by the way, yesterday I saw the Oscars, and among the actors were Russians who still live in Russia and haven't said a single word against the war. They are filmed in Russian propaganda films, including in temporary occupied Crimea. They got this huge platform to promote Russian culture. I'll leave a link to the article with details in the description. So that's why I'm asking you to share this video, so that the Ukrainian voice can also be heard. Or you can share videos by other Ukrainians. You know what I want? I want to end this video with gratitude to everyone who cares about our existence and future and the war. It means a world to me. Thank you so much. This channel wouldn't exist without you. Without your support, we wouldn't have held the front lines. Maybe I wouldn't even be speaking Ukrainian anymore. Your words and actions have a huge power, and I'm grateful to those who use it for good. That's all for today. До побачення, everybody.